Hey everybody, welcome to Kiki Convos Thursday at 8 o'clock. Happy to see everyone. Why did I say that? We already know what time it is.
What time is it? Oh wait, it's okay. Yeah, it's
8:02. Good evening. I'm sharing this to my fan page.
Right now.
Weston's gonna share. Yeah, everyone's always faster than I am. It's the craziest.
Well, we just got to do it so I don't forget to do it, right?
Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly. Good evening. Happy Thursday. It has been a week.
That's true. I don't know why or how, but it has been a week. Well, I do know. I've been teaching, well, and we can get into this, but, it's a process teaching full time again after having been, like the pandemic break that everybody kind of got into a groove of like, oh, yeah, I'll just sip on my beer and have a little Netflix. What day is it now? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, here's my schedule and here's my, full studio that I have to sort of pay attention. Oh, here's the music that I need to start learning because I've got a project coming up for this. And it's like nobody gave us a pre-warning of like, oh, hey, by the way, you want to start setting your alarm earlier for next week. It was just like it all of a sudden happened and it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. There's no playbook into how to get back into normal life for us. But as we're trying to figure out tech and Zoom and how to get your unemployment that's taken 3 months and then how to hustle your way back into everything. And then all of a sudden, crash, boom, you're having to sing again? Like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah. And all the strength if you're trying to also juggle the Sound Jack or Jam Kazam or Jamulus situation with synchronous music making. I don't know if you've even dipped your tiny little pinky toe into that, but like.
Yes, I have. And actually, you walked me through it.
Oh,
remember?
Really?
Madison.
I do remember. Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is GarageBand? And I don't know how to do this.
Well, so that's different. So now there's a software that's available. There's 3 different platforms. SoundJack is one, which is out of Europe, I think in Germany. And then there's Jam Kazam, and then there's Jamulus.
Hi, Kitty. Jamulus. Kitty. Okay, so he never comes to the show. He's at the show.
Oh, hi, Kitty.
Hi, Rudy. This is Rudy. Hi, Rudy. He must like your voice.
Well, maybe I'll get on my Howard Stern. I can't. I've got my camera. I've got my mic like right here. Okay, you doing anything?
I don't know. It's something. He literally never comes to combos.
And well, I'm so glad that he dropped by. This is great.
Yes. So thank you for stopping by, son.
Yeah. Well, okay. So with these different programs, and SoundJack is quite honestly the best if everyone has the right equipment. You have to have an audio interface. You have to have a microphone plugged into that audio interface. You have to have either a fast music box, which is something that runs the software externally from your computer so that the processor of your computer doesn't get used on the actual software.
Got it.
And then you have to have headphones. But what it allows you to do is one person can be in Philly and another person could be in Houston and a pianist could be in Seattle and they could play while you and I sing and all 3 of us are synchronized without any delay.
Wow.
Look at your face right now. You're like, what?
I'm like, what? You have to tell. Okay, I'm gonna go back in the replay, but but serious, like these are things we need to know.
Yeah, it's so the word that the catchword of the month is synchronous, music making, and so the problem is, well, the other catchword, latency or lag, and so if you, I don't know if you've ever tried to sing with somebody on Zoom. Or this,
where it cuts up, the high notes cut out and stuff.
Well, the stuff cuts out, but you can't stay in time. If the trick is you start doing row your boat or whatever, some kind of round, and if you start doing it, it's like, okay, that's terrible. We're all off. Everything is not synchronized. But in order to get everything to line up, whoever created this stuff is far more intelligent than I. But it's pretty cool. And there've been like your alma mater, AVA. Or wait, did you go to AVA? Sorry, Curtis.
Cut it
I'm
out.
so sorry.
I love AVA, and I love everybody that went there. Shout out to Indra Thomas and all Latanya and Jesus and Dana and all the guys. I went to Curtis.
You went to Curtis. My apologies. Anyway, there are different institutions, which will not be named, that are using SoundJack to help the coaches work with the singers and everybody, sort of organizing that stuff. So it has been a really helpful thing. But the problem is, like, I even had a friend of mine I saw on Facebook today. Oh, it only took 45 minutes to get everything set up, but then we were able to have a lesson. And it's like, oh my God.
I don't have 45 minutes these days.
I know. I don't
have an extra 45 minutes.
Well, we all can't be as fancy as.
Listen, cut it out. We didn't cheers.
Cheers.
Salute. Mm-hmm. Salute. So Weston Hurt, welcome to Combos.
I am so thrilled to be here. It is an honor. You told me 3 months ago, whatever it was, you're like, you better figure out what you like, what you do. You got to get your digital content going. And I was like, it's a good idea. What do I like to? Oh, well, I'm a teacher. I guess I could do a show about vocal technique or something. Boom. Jerome Hines, Great Singers on Great Singing, Part 2 with Weston Hurt.
Under the Hood, ladies and gentlemen, on Wednesdays?
Fridays at 4.
Fridays at 4.
Well, Fridays at 4 Central, 5 Eastern. But yeah.
Eastern, right. Yeah, that's right. We did have that conversation, and we were talking as we were trying to get our recordings together for Madison.
That's right.
I was like, get it together, Weston. Get your thing. Get online.
I am so thankful for your advice in that. I mean, you seem to be the trendsetter in this virtual world of making all the things happen. I mean, whatever. Don't look at me like that. You have so effortlessly, it seems, navigated this bizarre space with such like grace and elegance. Miss Artistic Advisor to Portland Opera and hosting this show. And I know you're hosting something on Dallas Network and all these things that are happening are just so exciting. And I tell you, I was so much looking forward to being the guest on this show. Look, Russell knows.
Hey, Russ. Russ was with me, was down with me from the beginning. Yes.
Exactly.
But, hey, David. Hey, Finland. Hey, Alan.
I'm having so much fun.
Well, listen, we're going to talk about me for 2 seconds and then we're going to talk about you. But no, I watched, people like Leah Crochetto and Isabel Leonard and a few other people very early on, doing their shows. And I was a fan of theirs and Sasha Cook and all those guys. But, no, there weren't any companies asking me to sing anything. And so, I was watching everybody like do these things and, and I just thought, well, I'm going to create my own thing. And I, like I said, I called my friends and and asked Russ and Janae and my husband, about this. I had this idea and I just put it out there. And, you guys know me, my friends know me and they know Kiki and my personality. And so it's just awesome to be able to share it and to help the industry in any way I can, to be of service. And these shows are of a service.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I hope that you're archiving all of these episodes somewhere so that people can go back and watch all that stuff, because you're absolutely right. The industry and we as, the population within the industry are sincerely appreciative of what you're doing and what everybody is doing. All the names you just listed and more. Like, it's really cool stuff to watch.
It absolutely is. And I'm so proud of our generation.
Yeah.
We are really holding it together, holding it up. And it's just an honor to be, colleagues and friends with all of us who are doing the thing. So let me just say hi to some people. Hey, Alvin.
Oh my God.
Alvin Crawford. Hey, Kev, big bro. I know Alvin is amazing. I have to have him come on the show.
Alvin Crawford is, when I was at Juilliard Opera Center, he had been at Juilliard for I think 8 years at that point or something. And we were doing Onegin together, and he was the Zaretsky, I think, or maybe Graham, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, we went out for a lunch break and we walked out the door and he was like, "Oh, hey." And there was this woman who had a little baby carriage and we talked and I sat there for a little while and "Oh, sorry. Audrey, this is my friend Weston. Weston, this is Audrey." I was like, "Oh, hey, okay, how you doing?" Yeah. And I we laughed and he goes, "You have no idea who that was, do you?" And I'm like, "No." I even asked her, I go, "Oh, do you know Alvin from Juilliard?" Or yeah, that was Audrey, the Broadway famous Fancy Pants. I was like, okay.
Right. Lesson learned, right?
He knows. Yeah. Anyway, all these people are great.
All these people. Colin. Hey, Colin. Michelle, thank you very much. Veronica, my little sister down in Austin. Hey, Sue. Miss Sue Dixon. So, please tell the people who you are and where you're from.
Oh my gosh. Well, my name is Weston Hurt, and I'm from Houston, Texas. I grew up here in Houston. I was actually born in California, and my dad was in the Air Force, and he got hired to fly commercially, and he got a job with an airline company based in Houston called Texas International Airlines. And so he moved the family down to Houston when I was about 4.5. And so we moved here, and so I grew up in Houston. You know, I don't really have any memories of California. Mm-hmm. Grew up in Houston, and have always sort of been, you know, in and around Texas. I mean, I've moved around certainly throughout my education, and eventually when I moved to New York to sort of start the singing thing. But about 8 years ago, we moved back to Texas. Once my wife and I had our daughter, thought it would be beneficial and helpful to be near family, to, you know, when I'm on the road singing, to have my mom 10-15 minutes down the road to help, you know, with babysitting and just emotional support. And so we've been back here in Houston for the last 8 years, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. And where'd you go to school?
So I grew up with my mom as a junior high choir director, and then eventually moved her way to high school as an assistant choir director. And so when I was transitioning from junior high into high school, I was a football player. We played football. That's what we do in Texas. And she told me that for my fine arts credit, you have to take choir in high school. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And so I got into 9th grade and I joined the choir, and a man by the name of Dennis Boyder was the choir director. And I guess it wasn't until my sophomore year that she actually came over to Klein Oak High Schools, where I went to high school. She came over my sophomore year as the assistant director, because she had been working at a junior high that was in the same district, but then she got promoted. And sophomore, junior, and senior year, it was great. My mom was always there. Hey, Mom, can I get like $5 to go for lunch or whatever? You know. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that that nudge of like, well, nudge, whatever. I didn't have a choice. She was like, "You're taking choir." I didn't realize how much fun it would be. Mm-hmm. B, I had no real introduction to classical music until then. And C, I had no idea the ratio of guys to girls in that choir. And I mean, you hear every guy basically say it, you know, it's like, yeah, there were like 80 women and like there were like 8 of us. I mean, there were probably more like 15 or 20 guys, but there were literally like probably 200. I mean, it was a huge program.
Wow.
You know, to have that many guys was still impressive. We had a men's chorus. We had, you know, a few different mixed choruses. And so right from the get-go, I was presented in high school with this like legit sort of repertoire. We were doing major works throughout the year. The next year, I think my sophomore year, when my mom was there, she was like, "You know, you should audition with us for the Houston Symphony Chorus." And I remember singing for them, and I was accepted in there. Betsy Weber was the chorus master at that time, and just in time for me to do Verdi Requiem with Christoph Eschenbach conducting. And
oh my God, the legendary conductor.
Right. He did it from memory. And I remember standing there, you know, we only had maybe a few rehearsals with him, but like, I just remember sitting there watching him do the whole thing from memory. Me holding this, you know, biggest score that I had held at that point in my life, not understanding how he could memorize all of this stuff. And then it gets to that Dies Irae moment, you know, with the big bass drum, and you're standing on a stage with it. And it was just, I think that was probably the first musical experience. And I was only 16 years old. I was in the midst of playing football. I had just met a guy who had transferred in from New Jersey who asked me, he's like, hey, do you guys have a lacrosse team down here? And I was like, lacrosse? And he goes, yeah, yeah. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And he's like, oh, you got to come over to the house, watch some videos, you know. So he was a big lacrosse player in New Jersey. And I was like, we got to have this. And so he and I founded the lacrosse team at my high school. And so I was playing all kinds of sports and then having this choral experience. And then, yeah, it was just sort of, it was my experience, I will say, in high school was without question the driving force, or the, you know, the monumental thing that made me understand and realize how much passion I had for something that I up until that moment I was completely unaware of, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, for those who are on here and don't know, Weston is a fantastic baritone.
Oh yeah, I'm a singer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mention that. I'm an opera singer.
I know we went right into it, and I didn't lead up into like, he's sung here, he's done this, he's won this, you know. We just deep dived right into it.
We should post a picture of our Electra costumes from Santa Fe. That's what we should have started with, was like a zoom out from.
We should have started with that. So ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know, Weston and I go back to the Santa Fe Opera. We were both apprentice artists in 2000.
20 years ago.
Oh my God, I need a drink. Ooh, 20 years ago. And still here hollering.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! But yeah, I mean, we met there. I think it was my second summer, and we like stayed in touch, and then we lost touch, and then we like got back in touch, but always very connected. Yeah. From the first time we met, I always thought you were just a wonderful spirit, a fantastic, you know, musician and artist and stuff. Always admired what you did. So
that's very sweet. I'll never forget. I remember your scene at the end of the summer was the Onegin, the Tatiana Onegin final duet.
With Brian.
With Brian.
Yeah. So why opera? Why opera? Like, what, you know, you go to high school, you're singing these choirs. Yes, Finland Lamb. That's right. Shut your face.
We're not that old. My beard would suggest otherwise, I think. Listen. I don't know.
Mine would too, but you can't see it.
So good. Why opera? Okay, so one of the experience, I have to thank my mom so much for her influence in me, because she was like, okay, well, we're gonna go see a show at Houston Grand Opera, and I was like, what are we gonna do? She took me. My first opera was Boito's Mephistopheles.
Your first opera?
That was the first show I ever saw with Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was singing the title role. It was that big production that they had done that traveled around everywhere. And when he came out, I was just like, it blew my mind that here I'd been inquiring. I had sung my first "Voisi Peru." You know, I was like learning how to sing. And here's this guy that comes out and he's just like, you know, it's unbelievable. He filled the house like without any effort. You know, at that time in my life, I just couldn't believe that that's what singing could sound like. Mm-hmm. And quickly followed by Carmen with Denise Graves.
Yes.
This was like that 90-91 season at Houston. And the production values and like the singers and everything that I saw was just like, you know, they talk about like the spectacle of the piece, right? Yes. I just got totally drawn in, and I was just like, wow, all right, this is cool. Now, I will say that simultaneously, like my dad was taking me to like New York on a trip when he would need to fly to New York, and hey, let's go see a show. And I remember he took me to Phantom of the Opera. That was the first show I ever saw on Broadway. And so there was this sort of like, singing is this stuff, you know, in the professional realm. And I didn't really have a good understanding of like, at that time, like these people are singing like this, and these people have microphones.
Yeah.
And that means, I didn't really understand what those differences were, but I
Mhm.
knew after those moments of seeing live theater that this was something that I wanted to be involved with.
Mhm.
Um, and then my senior year in high school, our high school production of Into the Woods, I was cast as the wolf and the Cinderella's prince. And that was
Mhm.
the first time I ever got a chance to be on stage doing a complete role.
Wow.
And again, at that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like
Yeah.
that, I don't know what this is, but I want to be on stage where I get to dress up and I get to sing fun music. So it's the fact that like Stephen Sondheim was my first like role,
Yeah.
it's so complicated and such, amazing complex music.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me. It was cool. And then at that time I was being recruited from a small private liberal arts university in Central Texas, Southwestern University in Georgetown. And interestingly enough, this small school, I think 1,100 students total, just undergrad. There wasn't any graduate program. They had like 6 or 7 graduating people from my high school, not even at that school, but in their choir at that school.
Mhm.
Because my high school choir director, who's now my stepfather, Dennis Boyder, who was instrumental in along the way, casting me as a soloist for some of the pieces that we did in choir, but then also just really making me have a better understanding that if I really focused, I could do something with my voice. And so he had a good relationship with Kenny Shepard, who was the director of choral activities at Southwestern. And they had a nice little pipeline going. And they had recently acquired a man by the name of Gerald Dolter, who was the tenured track voice teacher and opera theater director, who had had a significant career over in Germany and had had, a pretty impressive career in the States before that. But then he had children and wanted to come back to the United States and raise his kids. And so he ended up casting me my freshman year, first semester, as Figaro in The Marriage of Figaro.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was like, I didn't ever think that I would make it through that experience. But on the other side of it, which I did, of course, and it was, I don't know if we had any right doing it, but here's this little private school in Central Texas putting together a Mozart opera, double cast, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of amazing what we were able to do. But on the other side of it, I was like, okay, this is different. Like I experienced like this is different than what I had had in high school with musical theater. And I kind of started to feel the differences between the two and understand more specifically the type of nuance that operatic literature requires. And that to me at that time was just far more interesting. And I was curious about that. And so that then led to me being just sort of all in. And, you start doing all the auditions for stuff. And
yes, of course. And you went to IU for college, right?
I did. In fact, so along that path, I remember after my second year at Southwestern, my teacher calls me up and he says that he's going to be announcing tomorrow that he's retiring from Southwestern and he's going to be taking a job at Texas Tech University. And he wanted me to transfer to Tech. And so right as I felt so comfortable and like, well, this is my home now. This is like, I love this school. I've got my friends. I've got my, okay, fine. And so I transferred to Texas Tech. It probably, if it had been any other school, I probably would have said no. But Texas Tech was where my mom and dad met. It's where probably 90% of my family had gone to school because they're all from West Texas. And so it just seemed like, okay, that makes sense. I'll go to Tech. And it's funny, I made some of my best friends at that school that I'm still best friends with today, which is kind of cool. And it was a much larger state university. I mean, I went from like 1,100 students to like 35,000 students, right? So it was nice to kind of put my foot into a much bigger pond and get that experience and higher production values, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Well, listen, IU does all they do, the big,
Oh my God. Well, yes. Yeah. So after that, I had spent a year. So I did along the way, I did opera in the Ozarks between that transition where I transferred to Tech. That summer between my sophomore and junior year, I did opera in the Ozarks, which for me, again, that was where I sang with an orchestra for the first time. Totally sold on that. I highly recommend it. If you've never sung with an orchestra, please do so. And
It's one of the perks of the job, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the perks of the job.
Yeah.
It really is. And then I transferred. Well, no, then I transferred to Texas Tech, and then the next summer I spent out in Des Moines at the Des Moines Metro Opera. And I remember there was an apprentice out there, this woman by the name of Jennifer Ayres, and we became friends. And she was like, "Yeah, I just finished this thing called the National Opera Company. I don't know if you remember this, but it used to be called the Grassroots Opera Company, and one of their artists that they claim to fame is Sam Raimi, who had started with the Grassroots Opera Company." Okay. And I was like, I know that name.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll sing for them. And I sent in my stuff, and they had since changed their name to the National Opera Company, which was based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And yeah, I went out there, and Don Wilder was the man who was running it at the time. And he asked me to sing some of the stuff. I was going to have to sing Figaro in the Barber of Seville, so he needed to hear La Grande Factotum. He needed, offered me a contract on the spot. And so I left school actually without finishing my bachelor's degree to go pursue this National Opera gig. Because previously I had been offered a gig with Opera Illinois with Fiora Contino. Did you ever work with Fiora?
No.
Fiora Contino, whose father was the original Marcello in Bohème and the original Tonio in Pagliacci. So, original. This woman was already probably well into her 80s when I first met her, and he had her really, really, really young, and so she grew up under the piano listening to all these, amazing people. So, anyway, she offered me Wagner and Faust with Opera Illinois, and my teacher was Valentin. Walter McNeil, Cornell McNeil's son, was my Faust. Nova Thomas was the Marguerite.
Nova, yes.
Amazing cast. Virginia Dupuis was Zibel. It was just this amazing experience for a senior in undergrad. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so that led to me wanting to just, okay, the heck with school. I'm going to go out and sing for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I did, because along the way, that's where I met Christina, my wife.
Yeah.
She was a student at Meredith College, where we did a lot of our rehearsals and master classes and stuff. And so along the way, though, my mom, again, was like, honey, you have to finish your degree. You've got to go back and finish that degree, because once you finish it, no one can take it away. Okay. So I decided to go back to Southwestern to finish my degree. And I needed just like 1 year. And I did that, and then I went to Indiana University, because I realized after being out on the road for a year, there was a lot of stuff that I had no idea about as far as technique and as far as like how to maintain stamina. I mean, I remember we must have done 65 performances of Barber of Seville.
Yes.
And I remember them saying to me one time, they're like, we do have the parts if you wanted to sing that in B flat today instead of C. And I was like, I'm okay. I think I'm okay. What would that feel like? What would that feel like?
Maybe I'll try it one time.
Okay, well, wait, let me just try that. And then, and then the next time I was like, let's do that B flat again.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, yeah, I think I'll do it again. Listen, you're talking about a whole generation, a whole different generation from that particular instance of changing keys to the level of talent in regional small opera companies that they don't even talk about. People don't even know.
I know
about that.
I know. It's kind of amazing to think about when you look at like what the landscape, and I mean, well, I was going to say what the landscape used to look like, what it looks like now, and how that's changed sometimes. But like, okay, firstly, your talk with Stephanie Blythe was like epic. I loved that discussion. I love you both as artists and as friends and as people. But what she said about like all the art that's made in the middle, right, with all these different regional companies, whatever that means, it's amazing to see and to note, like, and I have been like, you're singing at I'm like, hell yeah, I'm singing at blah blah blah. It's gonna be amazing. And kind of to your point, it's like people don't remember that like this is where everybody sings. Like there's nothing shameful about singing in Omaha or singing in Austin or in
Des Moines
or in Detroit or Atlanta or anywhere else. It's like there's not just 4 companies in this country. It's like there are amazing companies scattered throughout this great country. And
absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, that was. I definitely realized though on that tour that I had a lot to learn and that I could not just bank on my talent alone and my passion for this art form. And so I did. I went back to school and I decided to go to Indiana University, primarily because I had a good friend of mine who I had met at Texas Tech, who was a student there. And he was telling me about how great the shows are and, the talent is. And I remember for my audition weekend, I went to, they say like, oh, there's a show this weekend. You can come to the opera. You can go see this. You can do that. So I went to the show and they were doing Cenerentola.
Mm-hmm.
Curtain goes up. Robert O'Hearn's set, probably like straight from the Met. Like it was unreal to me how elaborate the set was at Indiana University.
Mm-hmm.
And Ramiro walks out. Larry Brownlee.
Yes.
Magnifico comes out. Kyle Kettleson. Like these singers on this stage at this school. Coming from where I came from, I was just like, is the Met on tour right now? Like, what is happening at this school? How do these are students at this place that have like, it was unreal to me how incredible that experience was. I was like, done. I'm coming here. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that I had the experiences. Like I had already done a couple of young artist programs and I'd done that tour. Mm-hmm. And so when I came in, I kind of came into this new program that had been established called the Performer Diploma for Professional Opera Studies, which was their attempt to be competitive with like the Houston Opera Studio or the Lindemann program. They threw a ton of money at us and they all gave us like full rides. And we also had associate instructorships. And so we had a pretty good setup, but they quickly realized that they couldn't afford to continue the program. Mm-hmm. So the people who came in were the only people that ever got this degree. And so there's like 8 of us with these pieces of paper on the wall. But it was fun while it lasted. We had a lot of great moments there working with, guest directors like Tito Capobianco.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I got to do production of Rigoletto and Lucia with him. Mm-hmm. The whole experience was phenomenal. And to have you go down the hall and you've got Giorgio Tozzi and, Tim Noble had recently come there.
Yes.
My teacher was James McDonald, who was a wonderful technician and exactly what I needed at that time. James King and I used to have lunch over at Bear's, this pizza place that was right across the street. It was just, Virginia Zayani.
Yes.
Like there was just like everybody, Patricia Stiles, Patricia Wise. But it was unreal the level of artistry that you could find walking those halls, and both on the faculty and the student side. It's like it's a big place that you end up meeting these people who go on to unbelievable things. So yeah, and after that was when we met in 2000.
So you had all of that experience and before we met.
Well, the first summer at Santa Fe for me was that summer that we were there together, and that was the summer between my first and second year at IU.
Yes. Okay.
And then I skipped a year, and then I went back to Santa Fe in 2002, where I got to cover Mark Delavan as Germont. That was where my relationship with that role began. And he and his wife had their child, and so he had to leave for like 5 or 6 weeks. So I got to step in and do all the rehearsals, which was amazing. And so that Santa Fe I have such fond memories of that program and experiences. But yeah, and then I transitioned. We moved out to the East Coast. We moved to New York I got accepted to the Juilliard Opera Center, and that was terrifying because I had never lived out there. I'd only been out there a few times to do auditions, which I was always scared of because I never knew what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know my way around. I didn't know anything. But I had to quickly learn. And, thankfully there were some wonderful people like Alvin Crawford.
Yes.
But, I was the only one that had come in from the outside. There was people who had been like there for 4 years, like doing their undergrad and then graduate, and then they got into JOC. But I was the only person who didn't already have a degree from there that had moved into it. And so, same old thing where you have to meet new people and sort of establish yourself again. But
of course,
I remember the first thing that happened to me when I was there. They did a audition for the Benjamin Britten War Requiem, and
Hmm.
I got cast as the baritone soloist. And they were like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "Where are we going to do this?" "Oh, at Carnegie Hall." Oh, I was like, "Okay."
Right,
So,
because they always say the longest. Leontine Price always talks about the longest walk for her was from Juilliard to the Metropolitan Opera, but it's literally across the street,
literally across the street.
literally
Yeah.
next
Or
door
well,
to
but just down the hall. I mean, it's just
down the
connected
hall,
over the
right?
thing. Yeah.
But New York, the epicenter, the mecca of classical music,
And I was like, "Oh, of course. And who's conducting? Oh, David Atherton. Oh, the top Britain specialist of the world."
Yeah.
So it was a quick dive into like an intense, sort of study, and
Mhm.
I don't even know how to explain it. It was a lot, but thankfully I was able to sort of navigate through that world, and I was
Mhm.
working with a voice teacher with Stephen Smith, and
Mhm.
meeting all my friends that kind of became my support team there, and so it was I don't look at any of those experiences throughout my education with any regret at all.
Mhm.
I was very fortunate to always have very intelligent teachers who always inspired me and motivated me and taught me what I needed to learn in that moment, which was
Mhm.
super, super important.
Absolutely. We got some people coming in. Hey, Matt, my regular combo, part of the combos crew. Ellen
Oh my
Schlafer.
gosh, she was at Santa Fe with us, remember?
Yes, Ellen
I love
was
Ellen.
yes, stage
Audrey Babcock.
management. And Ellen knows this. We laugh about this all the time. I never, after leaving Santa Fe, ever wear open toe shoes at
That was
all in a
the
rehearsal or in any time in the theater. And it's Ellen's voice still in my head, and that like piercing look has lived with me for 20 years
you
of my
know,
career.
as you mentioned, people forget some of the amazing talent that, sang all over this
Mm.
country. Sometimes people forget that the level of I don't know what to call it. Let's just say that stage management back in those days had no fear of offending anyone with their comments about what we needed to do or not do.
Listen, yes, exactly. And you know what? That's the lesson. Those are the lessons.
Thank goodness for people like Ellen and who was the grandmother of them all, that Carolyn um,
Yes,
Black.
Ellen.
Ellen, you have to remind us who Carolyn's last name. That was she had been the stage manager at Santa Fe for decades and had really helped even build that company, and just an
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But we were terrified of her
Oh my
and
gosh.
that crew, and it was just like, wow.
Yeah, you didn't want to talk. You weren't to eat. Lockwood,
Lockwood,
yes.
yes,
There
yeah.
was no chewing gum. There was no, none of that. Eating in your costume, wearing open toe shoes, talking in rehearsal, like, mm.
Can you imagine the meetings that they must have had, like, these singers, they're going to try to do anything. You take out your whip, you get them back. Like, I mean, they killed it. They were so, I was like, okay.
Oh yeah, can you imagine with the cell phones now? Please, it would be crazy.
I can't
It'd
even
be
imagine.
crazy.
God bless
So,
stage
so
managers.
crazy. Those were the years. So talk about you go to school and you go to these programs, and how does one go into being a professional? What was like was your leap from being a student to actually being a professional singer?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know, you know, based on what I was just saying, it's like my senior year in undergrad, I had that professional opportunity to sing the comprimario part of Wagner and Faust with all of these professional people. And along the way, there were occasional opportunities when I was a student at IU where Deb Sandler, who's now at Lyric Opera Kansas City, when she used to be the general director at Kentucky Opera, she hired me to come in and sing The Corporal and Daughter of the Regiment and First Nazarene and Salome, Mazzetto and Giovanni. So I had had some professional opportunities throughout my education. And again, I can only look back and think to myself how fortunate I was to have voice teachers, but also to be surrounded by colleagues and friends who were all sort of in the same pursuit of this career at a super high level. And
Mm.
so when I look back on it, it kind of all bleeds together of like what was professional, what wasn't. I don't
Mhm.
ever remember being involved. I mean, even when I look back at that, Figaro and the Marriage of Figaro when I was 18 years old, our opera director, who was my voice teacher, he ran a tight ship. He made it like a professional rehearsal process.
Mhm.
And so I was experiencing sort of the detailed specificity of like a rehearsal schedule and like what your expectations are from the very get-go. But I think that it's kind of unfortunate. There's such a weird cookie cutter tiered system in this country as to
Mhm.
how to become a professional.
Mhm.
Because it's the rarity that you find, and like again, I feel very, very fortunate that I was able to kind of navigate that world and went from a pay to sing where I won a full scholarship at Opera in the Ozarks to Des Moines at the time, think paying like $200 every other week,
Mhm.
to Santa Fe
Yeah.
and to
$2.50 every
right, right. And then I spent a summer out at Aspen, and then I did the Juilliard Opera Center, and then I did Wolf Trap a couple times. And so, yeah, I realized that's kind of like the top 1% of the young artist people who like we all aspire and hope to be able to have those experiences. But
Mhm.
so I think for me, though, that, and I hate this word, but like that pedigree, sort of one thing sort of elevated it to the next and elevated it to the next. And so,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I think that it was the people who I surrounded myself with, my teachers and the coaches and the pianists, the
Mhm.
friends that I kept for the most part. We held each other to a pretty high standard, and I, I never remember being put in a situation, well, maybe once or so, but where I didn't realize what I was supposed to have. If I went to a coaching, I understood what my job was before I got there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that idea of how do you become a professional. I mean, I think that the expectations that you hold for yourself and the understanding of what the career sort of needs and wants, and I don't know. I just felt like I was trying to put one foot in front of the other, but
Mhm.
also, occasionally looking to my left and right to see what other folks were doing, and then, just hope that when I would apply to the right places, I'd have, an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, but I mean, you really had the luxury of having a wonderful and very important agent early, as your first agent, and you kind of started your career. Speak about that. Step into that Western Hurt,
What's
the
that?
wonderful roles you gotten to sing and the places you've gotten to sing, and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember, at the end of our first year at Juilliard, there was a wonderful class that Mary Lou Falcone taught
hmm
called Vocal Seminar. Each week was a different, here's how you walk on stage, and here's how you present yourself, and then let's talk about resumes. Let's look at everyone's resumes. Okay, let's talk about headshots. Let's talk about managers. And when she did, um, it was amazing because up until that moment, so you hear about these things, but you're not exactly sure of the
hmm
specificities and like detailed expectations that they might have for you, or that like how you even start those types of relationships,
right.
which was
How to
so,
get an agent, right?
yeah, yeah. And she brought Jack Mastriani
Yeah,
in to talk with us.
one of the top
And
agents in the world. Yeah.
exactly, I mean, I don't want to say he created Cecilia Bartoli, but he certainly had a huge role in doing all, because he also had a uh, TV production company thing, and they did all that, those, like the Cenerentola that they did in Houston, that was
Mhm.
huge for her. And all, so yeah, he was her manager. I mean, he had every Nikolai Kirov on him off, like he had everybody. It was kind of amazing. But I remember when he was sitting there and talking to us, he I have rarely felt this feeling, but like I really felt like he was just looking at me the whole time and kind of being like, this is what I think, and this is what you should think, and this is what you need to realize. And so afterwards, I don't know if it was like the stupidest, well, it obviously wasn't the stupidest thing I did, but I was like, Mary Lou, could I get his contact information? Because I think I'd like to reach out to him. She said, oh, sure. Okay. So I like contacted him and I was like, I think you should hear me. I'd love to sing for you. I'd love to set up a time and a date where you could come back over to Juilliard. And like I had like done my homework and talked to as many people and knew that, you know, I had my little folders available and I had 3 of them already put out with my headshot, my resume, and my bio and everything.
You're dating yourself.
I know, right? Oh God. But yeah, I was super proactive about it. And I remember I tried to contact there at the end of my first year at Juilliard. I probably contacted 6 or 7 different agencies and sang for a few. And Jack Mastriani and Ken Benson and Michael Benchetrit at CAMI all wanted to represent me. And so I had this decision to make. Do I go with CAMI or do I go with Mastriani? And I remember talking to Jack and he was just like, I think you're great, you know. And I was like, well, what do you think we would do? And he's like, I think we get you over to Europe, get you in a fest contract, you know, and I think we'd start out and get a lot of experience there. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. And I was like, what do you think about stuff in the United States? And he was like, well, you know, I have great relationships with the Met and Chicago and San Francisco and Houston. And I was like, I'm like 29, you know, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to just like step into those stages. And I felt like at the time when I look back on it, I remember going, well, CAMI, I wouldn't lose any of those more important contract relationships, you know, or you know, relationships with houses. But at the same time, CAMI had a significant number of, you know, relationships with smaller regional theaters, let's say, that I would be benefiting from. And so at the end of the day, I ended up going with that. And I told Jack that. And he was like, actually, you know, I think that's a really smart move on your part. I think that's good. I think you should do that. He goes, if you ever need me, I'm always there for you. And so, yeah, I started off with CAMI with both Ken and Michael. And, you know, they were able to get me heard by a lot of people, like a lot. I was doing more auditions than I'd ever thought were possible, you know. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to interview, how to audition, you know, how to manage time, you know, the importance of knowing yourself and being able to present that within a 10-minute window. And, you know, and some of those are more successful than others. You know what I mean? Like some auditions you walk in and you might have sung well, but they're like, did you remember to say hi? Like, you know, you're like, oh, yeah, this was my 3rd audition today. I forgot I had said hi in the previous one, but I forgot to walk in. Hi, you know. So it's important that that all of those steps happened for me. But you know, 3 years later, I was kind of feeling a little bit stuck, and after I had done some things that I thought were, I don't know, needing a bit more push, or you know, I don't know. You know, that's the problem with not wearing the horse blinders, is you start looking to your right and your left, and if you're friends with too many tenors and sopranos, as a baritone, you start feeling like a loser because they're all finding all this success and singing everywhere and doing all this fancy stuff. And I was like, I need to be doing that too, you know. And so I remember I contacted Jack and I was like, you know, I think I might want to move on. You know, what would you think about, you know, representing me now? And I remember him saying, oh, you know, I don't know what's going on right now with me. That was right when he was doing the whole buyout with IMG. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, but have you thought about Caroline Woodfield? And at the time I was like, I don't know who that is. And he was like, oh God, who are you? Why didn't you? Okay, here, hold on. Let me call her. Let me call you. Okay, she'll call you, whatever.
Wow.
So
Access. That's important.
Access. So very quickly, I was put in touch with Caroline, and she and Liesl are absolutely lovely. I love them to death. And you know, very quickly after that, we were sitting down and talking. I sang for her, and they were both really excited about me, and we started our relationship together. And you know, I remember she was like, well, darling, who do you have on your charm bracelet? And I was like, I don't wear jewelry. I don't know what you mean. You know, who do you know that likes you that you haven't, you know, had an opportunity to sing with? You know, and I was like, yeah, I remember every time I sing for Arizona Opera, they always Joel Revson, may he rest in peace. You
Yes,
know,
rest in peace.
he was always so positive about my auditions, but never a gig. Oh, darling, hold on, let me call you back. 10 minutes later, how would you like to sing 6 performances of Enrico and Lucia? And I was like, okay, great. And it was like, back
Mhm,
then it was
mhm.
I'm not sure how I haven't sung with Arizona in a while, but back then it was like everybody got it. If you were singing a leading role, you got a certain fee. And
Yeah.
she was able to convince them to hire me to sing all the performances. So I was making more money on that gig than I had ever made in my entire life.
Right.
And so that started a wonderful snowball of introduction to a different level of company and just a different level of access,
Mhm.
as you and Kenneth Overton just mentioned, access.
Yeah.
It was really important. And then I was with them for 11 years, 12, or yeah, 10, 11 years, something like that. And having a family, and I felt the need to make a shift, and
Mhm.
so I made the decision to leave them, and I'm now with Alex Fletcher. And it's interesting that his initials on the thing, Fletcher Artist Management, is FAM, and
Mhm.
there's not an acronym that better describes what that roster is like. It truly is like a supportive family, and with everything that he and Sarah have been doing, and Scott, it's just such a supportive and such an incredibly engaging community of people who truly love one another, and find that support through you as a person. It's like I said, I've been with the bigger sort of corporate agencies, and to be with a boutique, smaller sort of family,
Mhm.
it's more my speed, and it's more. And I certainly have never been happier. So for me and my where I'm at right now in my life,
Yes.
it's amazing. So
Yeah, I mean, people often don't get a chance to hear from artists, and to speak about that. The agency, the career, how you jump from being a young artist into a career, finding the right agent, trying. The myth that there's only one way to have a career, and I mean, I was fortunate enough to have Matthew Horner, last week, one of the power players in the industry, of course, and
unbelievable conversation. That guy is an encyclopedia of knowledge. It's
okay.
unreal how much. I mean,
Yeah,
I've always respected him. It's unbelievable what he knows.
absolutely. But just, this whole like was the myth with like demystifying the career and how to, and how you find your way, and which lane to be in, and it's not always bigger is better, and just all of these things that, I mean, I hope that I am doing and want to do in a way, and allow artists to speak about that, the truthfully
Yeah,
about those things. I mean, Alex is wonderful. I remember the beginning of Fletcher Artists, and
yeah,
and he has a family, and you have a family, and there are other artists on that roster
yeah.
that do have a family, and and still maintaining the career, and and
Right.
teaching.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't slowed down at all. I've actually increased the responsibilities, and my career has never, I was able to do things once I made that switch that I was never able to get going before. And so you just little things like that click, and they're like, yep, you made the right decision. You're on the right path.
Hmm. And when we're out here, and we're on these trajectories, and making role debuts, and changing your repertoire, because you now sing mostly the Verdi, the big Italian, big
Yeah.
French repertoire, but that's not how you started your career necessarily.
No, not at all.
Talk about a little bit about that journey vocally.
Well, I think that, certainly at the beginning, I think that it started out with like, okay, any job you get offered, you're like, yeah, I can sing that. Sure. That'll be great. Yeah. I never, and I mean, it was a combination probably for singing for smart people who were smart about casting. And I was smart about what I was offering back then. I was a very much a Handelian, Mozartian, little bit of like bel canto, with like things like Puritani, and
Mhm.
and like even like Pasquale and things like that, but nothing too big, you know. And then I remember it was Caroline Woodfield who literally says to me, she's like, "Darling, how's your Papa Germont?" And I was like, I didn't know that he was called that, but Germont, right? Okay, yeah. I would love to sing that role. She goes, "Oh, I think you should look at it," you know, and okay, oh, yeah, all right, great. And then she sets me up an audition with Spate Jenkins at Seattle, and next thing I know, I got cast as, you know, I mean, I think this was probably my third audition for him. You know, the first two never led to anything, but then I, at the right time, sang for him, and I think I probably sang Di Provenza, and I ended up getting cast, and that was with Eglise Gutierrez.
Oh,
she was my, oh my God, she's so good. She was my Violetta with Francesco Di Muro in his American debut as my Alfredo. And unreal. I mean, it was just unbelievable how amazing that experience was for me. They had recently lost their Ford and Falstaff, and so Spate came back to my dressing room like during the third or fourth performance, and he's like, Weston, hey, listen, how'd you like to come back and sing Ford and Falstaff with me in February?" And this was like in like November, I think. And I was like, December, January, Falstaff looks like not that thick. I was like, sure, I'll do it. The next day, or that night, you know, I'm like ordering the score, and I'm like, you know, I try to get all that text.
All the text, yes.
Crazy. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of how it started with that repertoire. And then it was to me as like an audience member, just sort of watching what was happening around me, people would say things like, just after having sung one production of Germont at Seattle and then another production of Falstaff at Seattle, "Oh God, you sing this all over the place." Yeah, and then you go, yeah. And then you know, you get hired to sing it like one more time, you know, and they're like, "God, how many times have you sung this?" Like 15, 20 times. Like, I don't know why people think like just because
people think that
you do like one or two things that are like sort of in the public eye, you know, and then they're like, "Yeah, this is great," you know, and on the flip side, you know, I think I have sung Sharpless more than any other role that I've ever sung,
and no one says anything.
Yeah, right. They're like, "You've sung this, right?" I'm like,
maybe a couple times.
Yeah, I think that's my. I remember the last production I sang was Summer Before Last in Seattle, and I think it was my 17th production of Butterfly, which I don't know. Some people are kind of like, "Oh yeah, I've done about 20, 25," you know, and other people are like, 17. Oh my God. And it's just like, I don't know if that's a lot or not a lot or whatever. I feel like I now kind of know the role a little bit, you know, and have an opinion about some stuff with it. But anyway, that was sort of, you know, how that bigger rep opened up, and same conversation. "Darling, what do you think about Scarpia?" And I was like, I think that would be the role that I would want to sing more than any other role in my life. I think that you might just be the next Scarpia, you know, and you know, this is kind of conversations which I love her for, and if anyone who is close to her, if she's watching,
yes, please tell Caroline we said hello. Yes, Liesl and I are friends on Facebook.
Oh yeah, Liesl and I are friends on Facebook. Like I said, I love them, but yeah, it was like one thing leads to another, and then people see, oh, okay, this has been going well, and this is going, and you know, it's that kind of networking thing where once one company takes a risk and then another company sees like, oh, okay, and that went well, okay, good, well then we'll try, and then, oh, you've sung that there, okay, well then we can bring you. It's almost like people are just waiting, like, okay, oh, and they hired, oh, okay, then we can hire her, or we can hire him, or we can hire, you know. But yeah, you know, I think the thing that probably in my career that was the most sort of surprising to me, you know, I was born without my right hand.
Yes, I was going to go into that. Yeah, please tell the people. Please tell.
Yeah, well, there's not a whole lot more to tell. His name is Schlermy. I named him in 3rd grade. But yeah, I was born without my right hand, and nobody knew why. It was not thalidomide. It was literally They think it was something called amniotic band syndrome, which is an unexplained thing that happens early on in a woman's pregnancy, where just like a little band comes out from the side and wraps around a limb or sometimes the spinal cord or the neck, and it can cause a variety of different complications. But I think in my situation, it just wrapped around my forearm, and of course it cuts off blood flow, and then, you know, that is past. And, you know, it's not a major thing because it's so early on in the pregnancy that no one really notices, and it never showed up on any kind of ultrasound. And so out I came backwards, might I add, for feet first. And they were like, "Oh, your son does not have his right hand." And but, you know, I am so incredibly lucky that I grew up with parents who never, ever said to me, "Well, you realize that because you only have one hand, this is going to be more challenging for you," or, you know, you shouldn't. I mean, I was a competitive swimmer. I started swimming on the swim team when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And I swam every summer. I just loved swimming. And then everybody around me in my neighborhood was on the swim team, or at least all my friends were. And so I ended up joining swim team, and I swam competitively every year throughout high school. Like I said, I started playing football in like Pee Wee Pop Warner League, and then I played in junior high, and I played in high school. I started playing lacrosse. I was named to the all-state lacrosse team, and I was named to Team Texas, which we then went out and did all these competitions. I played in college for 2 years. So I was just always kind of doing things the way that I could do it. You know, I was always making small transitions or translating. Okay, they're going to do that. Okay, so I can just do it like this, and that'll be fine. You know, I remember in Texas, you know, in our football training, we had all these like top 10 bench press, top 10 40-yard dash, top 10. And I remember in 8th grade, I benched 225 pounds, and people were like, "No, you didn't. How did you do that?" I'm like, "Come see, I'll show you."
You're right.
I would end up balancing the bar on my arm, and then I would push up, and of course the bar is like crooked, but I'm like, this is as far as I can go on both sides. I'm like, I don't know what you guys want, but this is how I do this, you know. And so I was always trying to, you know, be competitive and realizing that I always had to do it better and faster and, you know, than the other guy. But, you know, that led into performing, and I never even thought about it, you know. And it was at that first Opera in the Ozarks summer apprentice program where Carol Freeman, I don't know if you know Carol Freeman, he was the artistic director then, and he was staging our production of Barbara Seville. And he took me aside one day and he was like, "So listen, do you have a prosthesis or anything?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Well, no, don't worry about it. It's no big deal." You know, he goes, "You know, you might see some trouble along the way, but then, you know," he goes, "once you get famous enough, people won't care anymore." And I remember him saying it just like that. Like it was no big deal. Fine. Didn't even think another thing about it. And then I remember an experience I had when I was a student at IU. One of those teachers, who we've already mentioned, came up to me during a rehearsal, and she was like, "Oh, baby, nobody wants to see this. Please cover this up," referring to my arm. And I remember just being like, "What?" And you know, I was so comfortable in that arena, right? Just being in Bloomington and being a student and being in the opera program. And then here was like this super famous teacher who came and told me that the way I looked was disgusting and that I needed to cover it up. I needed to wear something that would hide how I looked. And I remember thinking to myself, like, who else thinks that? Like, does anybody else think that? Or does everybody think that? Or, you know, so then I kind of started getting a little bit in my head about it. And I kind of started thinking, okay, well, maybe when I wear like a suit, because at the time I used to get my suits, like I'd get the sleeve on the right side shortened, like a short sleeve. And in fact, I remember very vividly when I won I think I won an encouragement award the first time that I did the Liceo Albanese competition. And without mentioning it to anybody, I came out to sing the Bohème duet, Act 4 duet with a tenor, and I wore my tuxedo jacket that had a short sleeve on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the opera crowd was sort of, oh my gosh, he looks different. And it was mentioned to me, by my manager at the time, like, everyone's talking about you, but it's not, they're kind of talking about your arm, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know how we're going to. And then, sure enough, I sang for an opera company over in Europe, and they were like, "We would love to have you. We'd love to have you come to a fest. 35 performances only, so you can be free to go do guestings. This would be amazing, as long as you have a prosthesis." And I was like, will they help me get a prosthesis?
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out. No, we won't help you get one, but you have to have one. And at the time, I didn't have one. And I thought, I just lost out on an incredible opportunity because I was born with one hand and don't have a prosthesis. And so I made it my top priority to find somebody who could financially help me acquire one, which I did. I got a prosthesis. And the next round of auditions, when I walked in these doors wearing a long sleeve shirt with two hands, it was like all of a sudden people came out of the woodwork. We are so glad you did this. This was so important that you did this. And I was like, you didn't tell me that I should be doing this before. It's like everyone was so afraid to mention anything or say anything. But then when I got it, it was like, we're so glad you did this. And it was like overnight. It was literally like, that first round of auditions that I did out of Juilliard, I got enough work to keep me busy that first year. But when I had my prosthesis, it was like things were just clicking.
Wow.
And what happened though was that I would get to the gig. I remember one of the first ones, Toledo Opera hired me to sing Sharpless in Butterfly. And the director, wonderful woman, Helena Bender, who I love,
yes, a few times,
she was like, what would you think about doing Sharpless without your prosthesis? And I was like, I was born without my right hand. I was like, this would be great. I hate this thing,
Yeah, right.
So we played Sharpless as though, maybe the reason he has the desk job is because he was in the war himself and he lost his arm. And that's why he's, sort of bitter and angry. And then combined with, I don't know if you've ever read Frank Cozzaro's book, Maverick.
No.
He and I think it's Dominic Cosa that he interviews, and they get into talking about the details with the role of Sharpless, and Frank sees him as an alcoholic. And so there was all this backstory that I was like, okay, he's an alcoholic because he lost his arm to get through the pain and the loss and the frustration, and he's got the desk job. And it really made I've heard Sharpless referred to as pointless before.
Yes, exactly.
So it really made an interesting character, right? And so I was like, okay, this is great. And so Opera News reviews it and comes out and is like, Weston Hurt, despite his own physical limitation, he was born without his right hand, was able to sing the role of Sharpless with beauty and lyricism, whatever it was. And it was like, that's not really what I'm shooting for. I'm not trying to be like, I can still sing even though I only have one hand. I'm like,
well, what the hell does having a hand have anything to do with singing? It's absolutely freaking ridiculous. Hello, Kathy Olson. Hello.
Oh, hi, Kathy.
Kathy.
Yeah, like whoever said, I think that oh gosh, who was it that said that? Oh my God. Aaron in Seattle. He was like, whoever said that any of these characters had two hands to begin with?
Right.
It's like, these are just stories. For the most part.
Yeah.
Who says that this baritone role can't have one hand? And so I kind of, decided, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wear my prosthesis for everything that I do. And I did for a long while. And then I got my contract to sing my first Rigoletto. And I thought, well, if there's a role that does not need to wear a prosthesis.
Hello.
It's Rigoletto. Not only can he have
exactly.
he can have hunchbacking, he can have one hand, he can have a whole lot of mess going on, you know? And it worked. It worked so well. And it was something that I was so emotionally able to tap into with such, you know, it was really, it meant so much to me to be able to have that freedom. And from that moment on, I was like, this is stupid. If you are interested in my artistry, you need to understand that I was born with one hand, and that's part of who I am. And yes, I'm happy to portray a character with a prosthesis if that's what the director and I decide is best for that character in this particular production. But like, I don't need a gatekeeper of, you know, such and such company thinking to themselves like, this wouldn't work unless he had. I'm like, you have no idea. Once your public understands that there's a person behind this role and that that singer is somebody just like them and is, you know, someone who with their disability has overcome a variety of different strides that, you know, perhaps somebody in their audience could connect with and see one of their, you know, kindred spirits up there, which really does make a difference. You know, yes. I remember, I keep mentioning Seattle, but like I was singing in Seattle and I was contacted by a family who had a daughter who was interested in going into performing arts, and she was born with one hand. And they were interested in having me have lunch with them and just talk to her about the different experiences that I had. And that was one of the most meaningful, incredible moments in my life, was to be able to look into the eyes of this family and to be able to show them like, hey, listen, it's going to be okay. You know, these are the things that you're going to face, and these are the things that you can do to overcome these things. But, you know, just this idea that like there needs to be a certain look. And I think, you know, with everything that's going on, that, you know, the entire Black community and any underprivileged, well, not underprivileged, what am I trying to say? Like,
underserved,
you know, right, deserved group who, for whatever reason, has been underused, right, and in casting or in whatever, it's like people are starting to see, like, oh, we didn't realize that, whatever, you know, ... and it's like, yeah, huh, interesting, that maybe it doesn't matter what you look like or what color your skin is or whether you have two hands or, you know, whatever it might be. Can you tell a story? Can you connect to an audience? Do you have something unique to say? You have a voice, you know, you sound okay when you start singing notes. You know what I mean? It's like, can you, you know, I don't know. I'm sorry.
You do know. No, that's what, listen, you do know. And you're letting people, you are expressing that. And I'm so happy that you're speaking, because we need to hear this. We need to be having these kind of conversations. You know, we need to hear from you. You know, I know your story because we're friends, you know, talked about it, and you've taken the arm off because he has a trick that he does. And I think it was maybe the first, early on when we first met, and I was, oh my God, he has one arm, you know, like it's but you know, that's the thing that you do. And
well, and you know, once you sort of get past the whole like, oh, is he okay about it? Yes, I'm okay about it. I'm 45 years old, like I'm over it, right? I'm like, yes, it's fine. I understand people who first see it might be a little taken back, but like whatever, they get over it. And then you can find yourself in a production of Tosca. For my debut in the role of Scarpia, I had the privilege and honor to work with John Caird, director, here at my home company, Houston Grand Opera, where I saw my first opera with Sam Raimi and when I was a sophomore in high school, and then had the opportunity to come back and make my debut at this company in the role of Scarpia. John says to me, because I asked him, I was like, so, you know, I said, this is my first Scarpia, so I don't know, do you think maybe he should wear his like I should wear my prosthesis, like he'd have a prosthesis? And he goes, well, I don't know. He goes, what do you think Scarpia, maybe in public he would do one thing, but in private another? And I was like, yes, yeah, I like that. And he was like, why don't we do this? He was like, let me give you a black leather glove, and I want you to put that over the hand, because my prosthesis looks like a real hand. It's a mold of my left hand that's been reversed with I sat with an artist for like 16 hours, 14 and a half hours, something like that, where they painted it to match every skin tone and everything. And so if I were wearing it on stage, everyone would just assume that that's a normal hand, right? and he was like, let's get a nylon thing to go over the forearm to make it look like it's made out of wood, so it fits the period. And then I want to give you a black leather glove to put over the hand. And he was like, I don't want you to gesture with it. I don't want you to do anything with it, but just keep it to your side for all of Act 1. And I was like, okay. He's like, I'm going to give you a riding crop, and you kind of direct Spoletta and everybody, when you come in with that. But I don't want you to ever gesture with it. I was like, okay. And then in Act 2, you come in immediately, and this is the production that I think originated in LA, and it went to Houston, it was in Chicago, and then it came back to Houston, where Act 2 is sort of in Scarpia's warehouse. So there's all these gigantic boxes everywhere and everything. And
yes.
You come in and you almost immediately take off your jacket. And so I was left with just like my shirt with my sleeves rolled up. And you sing the first stuff, and then Tosca comes in, Cavaradossi comes in, and then Scarpia sends Cavaradossi off to be tortured. And then the three people that are left on stage are Scarpia, Tosca, and Spoletta. And, Tosca goes over and is like, no, please, to the wall where they've taken Cavaradossi off, right? And she looks back at, in that moment, they had it staged where Tosca looks back at me, and I looked right at her. I rolled up my sleeve. I took my arm. I popped it off. And and Spoletta was right next to me, and he was like, yes, master, yes. And it was like he knew exactly. He was like, oh, I get to touch the sacred hand, And then
and the audience is like,
oh. Yeah, and Tosca's like, oh my God. And like the audience every night, it was like, oh, because no one knew that it was fake. And so when I got to take off my prosthesis on stage in the middle of a show, and it was like, shit's about to get real. You know what I mean? It was like, it was so fun. It was one of the most amazing. And again, it's like, I felt like I got to be myself. And I mean, well, I don't want to be myself.
Well, you're not a rapist and like
exactly. I would not do any of the things that Scarpia does to Tosca, but I just, in that moment, I felt so much more physically free and available to dive into this character and in this action, because it was a very active death scene and a very active everything,
But that's the perfect time in the opera to feel the release, so that you can just launch into Act 2.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm at a place now where fortunately I do get to have those conversations with the director and say, hey, listen, I don't think that would make any sense for me to wear my prosthesis, as long as you're cool with that. And sometimes, they say, well, he is sort of a nobleman who, and I'm like, a nobleman who might have gotten into a sword fight, or I'm like, what are we talking about here? And she, and somebody might say like, no, I think that, that there's a bit of an argument made. And I have to say that I did this production of Traviata that was like wearing a business suit with like a rain jacket, and it was a German production. And they were like, yeah, no, you don't have to wear your prosthesis. And I was like, why would I not? Like, I mean, it seems like I should wear it. Like, I'm wearing a business suit. I'm like, it doesn't really make sense that, and I have to say that was the first time that I sang a role in a particular production where I was not wearing my prosthesis, where I felt like, this just feels weird. Like, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like Germont, unless it's a bizarre production, he should probably wear a prosthesis. Like,
of course,
it's like some sort of elderly gentleman of, this sort, but the good thing is that, you get to have those conversations and make those decisions collaboratively,
right? Not someone forcing their thing on you. Hey, Donato. Oh my gosh, I'm happy you came. Donato Cabrera, Lisa Daltrus, Kenny, yes, Wally, thanks for coming. Yeah. So talk a little bit. Richard Hobson said you were wonderful, Rigoletto and Nola.
Oh yeah, and Nola. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Warren, hey Warren, I haven't talked to you. I've seen you in so long. Yeah, thank you, wonderful artist. So talk about this time of COVID and what that's been like for you, and what was happening pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that was happening pre-COVID, I mean, I was ready to go to the next gig. I was preparing. I don't know how I was able to like live my life without doing a production of Fledermaus, but I never did. And then in like 1920, I was supposed to do. I started the season with Eisenstein, and then 1920. 2019 and 2020.
Okay. I was to say 1920. COVID. We're like, is this 2025? Like, what's happening?
Right. No, 2019 and 2020, that season that has now passed. I was supposed to start. Well, I did. I started as Eisenstein, and then I had one of my last gigs of the 2020 spring 2020 was supposed to be Falca, and I was preparing for that, and they just got swept out from under the rug. They just canceled it straight up, and that was right at the beginning of everything. And then all of a sudden, everything else got canceled, and you know, I know, and so we started finding ourselves in this place of like, what's happening, as we all were. And kind of still are, wondering how's it gonna look on the other side. But yeah, I will say that the absolute best thing that all of this has brought is that I have had the opportunity for the last 7 months to be home with my family and spend time with my wife and daughter. That, I mean, people are saying, you know, you'll never have that again. Like, that'll never be a thing that happens again, where people are just able to be at home and spend time together without the distractions of work, or, you know, being literally gone into a different city or country or whatever.
Months and months at a time. Yes.
Right. It was so unexpectedly beautiful in that way, that we got to spend time and focus on different things, and, you know, sort of zoom out a little bit. And, you know, I mean, obviously there's so much that has been confusing to everyone, and we still are trying to figure out, you know, what in the world is doing and going to look like. But yeah, I was also really fortunate that, you know, I've always, ever since I was a grad student at IU, I was telling you that they gave us a bunch of money, and one of the things they gave us was an associate instructorship. And that was one of the first times I started teaching voice lessons on my own. And I quickly realized that I loved it. I loved the opportunity to be able to translate these different ideas that my teachers had passed down to me, and help someone else that's standing in front of me, and how to get them through this, you know, issue, or over this hump, or whatever it might be. And so from time to time, between gigs, when I get bored, I sometimes apply to different things and talk to different people, or sometimes people call me and like, hey, are you interested in teaching? And you know, and somehow the everything that needed to line up, I was able to interview for the full-time position at UMKC Conservatory of Music in Kansas City. And
love that city. I love that city.
I love Kansas City. I absolutely love it. And it felt so right, because I feel like artistically at home there. I've sung with the opera and the symphony. I feel like I've already had friends on the faculty before I even got there. Maria Konyova, who I've sung with years and years ago, numerous times, with Aidan Soder, and with the dean that's there now, Diane Petrella, who is just phenomenal. Her leadership is incredible. And so when I did my interview there, I was just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I was just so fortunate that offer came like the first week of February. I think I was like the last person that was hired at that conservatory before everything hit. And I have to say that is like the saving grace through all of this, because during COVID, my wife was laid off. Of course, I lost all performing gigs almost. You know, so we were sort of like the one silver lining, was looking forward, in addition to spending time together, was looking forward to like, well, at least I'll be able to start teaching in the fall. And so it's been great to have that opportunity. But yeah, it's an interesting time, how people are sort of, you know, some people seem like they're really excited about different kinds of digital media projects, and it seems like sometimes they're maybe putting 2 feet in front of the other, instead of, you know, sort of, wait a minute, is this a great idea, or is this like, let's make sure this is a great idea, you know? But
yes,
you know, some folks are having great success with it, and you know, I'm looking forward to, I think you and I are both doing digital content for Madison Opera this fall, and
yes,
you know,
because we couldn't do our Trovatore. That we have been dying to sing together for so many years.
We have been dying, and then we found out that we're supposed to sing Di Luna and Leonora together, and then that got canceled, and it was like, oh.
I know. Oh,
so one of these days,
one of these days,
it will happen. But
yes.
yeah, I mean, you know, and like you know, through that time, and with your advice and with your inspiration, you know, I started doing this talk show Under the Hood, sort of combining my passion for teaching and also realizing that that's the thing that not too many people really talk about is like, let's talk about the challenges and struggles about vocal technique that you experienced throughout your education. But also, like, you know, when I started singing that bigger repertoire, I quickly had to realize I couldn't, well, when I made my transition to my current teacher, I'm with Stephen King now. And when I had my first couple of lessons with him, he was like, well, yeah, I understand what people are saying. It sounds to me like you're just blowing air through a mesh screen. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, how do I stop doing that and learn how to get a little bit better closure in my chords so I can make some sounds? Because I've got some contracts coming up that are, you know, Nabucco and like Rigoletto and things like that. And he's like, yeah, you're going to have to learn how to actually take a breath and resist that air. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Good.
They have a way, don't they? They have a way to make you feel like,
yeah, make you feel about. Yeah. But you know, it's interesting. Through that transition, or you know, I say transition. I mean, you know, it wasn't a huge transition. I mean, on I guess on one hand it was, pun intended. One hand it was, but on the other, I think that those types of pitfalls or struggles are important to talk about. And you know, while somebody might look at it and think, oh, that's just a natural progression, you know, he didn't have anything. I was being told that I couldn't be heard from like the seventh row because I didn't have any core in my sound. I mean, people were telling me that, you know, and I was like, I don't know why. I'm doing everything I think I'm supposed to be doing. Well, it turns out I was overblowing, right? I was abducting my chords instead of getting closure and adduction in my chord. I didn't really understand how to take a low breath and resist that air to create a type of sound that would cut. You know, I didn't realize how to do that and how to adjust my vowels to help that. And so anyway, it was interesting once I started talking to people and people just started sharing their experiences. And I'm so thankful again to you for encouraging that idea. And, you know, it's been really fun. I look forward to actually opening it up soon and talking to coaches and directors and conductors about what their process is like and different pitfalls and struggles that they had in what expectations are put onto them. So, you know, I love the idea, and it's really just, I mean, like this, you know, it's an opportunity to sit down and talk with, you know, some of your best friends that you haven't had a chance to hang out with for a while.
Exactly. Do it. And I'm telling you, when you do it with them, it'll change everything. When I started speaking to composer, I haven't talked to a conductor yet. You know, composers and librettists, and it just changed everything for me. The way I thought about this whole thing, and the way I think about even music making. You know, so this medium is it's been a gift during this time.
It really has.
Yeah. Lisa had a question. What do you feel about the drive-in opera, stadium opera concept that some companies are trying? Yeah, I don't mind it. Of course,
I think again, you know, an argument can be made that like, what an incredible way to broaden an audience and get people who, I mean, I'm sorry, but that sounds cool. Like, hey, we're going to see an opera. Oh, really? Theaters are open? No, it's at a drive-in movie theater. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, come with us, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. You know, I think that, who is it? Is it Tulsa that's doing it in a baseball stadium? They're doing a Rigoletto in a baseball stadium.
Wow.
Yeah. I'd heard about that. Sounds amazing. You know, I think great ideas. It'll be interesting to see how it, you know, obviously the questions are like, well, what's the audio going to sound like? How is the the immediate thing that hit me when I was a 16-year-old, sitting in the theater listening to Sam Raimi sing, is someone going to be able to have that kind of immediate, tangible, empathetic kind of connection to the performers on stage if they're watching through a screen or what, I mean, it's it's kind of like the Met HD broadcast. Super impressive that they get the quality that they get, but there's a difference between being in the theater and seeing it in a movie theater. Not to say that like it's not good. I think it is great. It's just different, and I think that those differences are not necessarily meant to be frowned upon. I think it's creative planning. I think it's awesome.
And I think that some singers will thrive in the virtual way that may not have had the opportunities to thrive in the large theaters.
Yeah.
And there'll be singers who will struggle in the new way, but I think technology will get better and over time, which would be wonderful. And I think a lot of opera companies, and I hope that Opera America and Opera Canada and Europe, which they probably are already doing, put the resources and find the resources and do the coming together with the tech companies and the microphone companies to figure these things out.
Yeah.
So that our industry can continue to thrive and grow in a way. So it's just a challenge of, the industry working with other industries to improve technology. And the beat goes on.
And the beat goes on. I just saw Kathy Olson said Phoenicia had excellent microphones. Phoenicia, I think she's talking about the festival. What's that?
They just did Tosca.
Right. Which, seeing that video with Kyle Albertson standing there singing Scarpia and with this like sci-fi, like I don't know what that was. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think somebody in that world, that's probably like, to them, they're like, oh, all they did was they just took an image of him and they just put it in this thing and they just surrounded by. That's easy to do. Well, in the opera world, we've never done anything like that before, and it was so cool to see that kind of technology being blended with Puccini. It was really cool. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen that production of Love for Three Oranges that Deutsche Oper Berlin does with their ensemble. They make use of technology in a way that is it's incredible. I mean, the whole production is like sort of like mind-blowingly bizarre, but they've got like an actual video camera on stage connected to this gigantic camera or screen rather. But yeah, I mean, it's like this use of technology in performing. I think, like you said, I mean, I hope that it inspires, why even put any kind of limitation on it? It's like, let's try to see how far we can go with it to create the type of experience that are going to bring in new audience members, that are going to increase the opportunities for, spreading the, performances that are happening. And
absolutely. Yeah. So what would you like to leave us with? Because we are at our time.
We've already talked for an hour.
We could just keep talking. We're talking for an hour and a half. It's amazing how the time goes, and you just been running your mouth. No, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. And then this immediately gets downloaded to YouTube because Kiki Conversations has a YouTube page.
Good.
And and so eventually when I get my act together, they'll all become also podcast things that I will think to submit so that a broader audience can hear them. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so just leave us with something because we just been talking.
I had no idea it was that. I'm so sorry.
What are you apologizing for? This is why you come on Fumbles.
It's true, but I feel like maybe I talked too much. My God, I had not looked up into that top corner of my screen to see what time it was.
Thank you, Kathy. So just leave us with something, Weston Hurt.
Okay, well, I will say this. Don't judge a book by its cover. Right? So, like I said before, it's like, don't ever make an assumption about somebody, good or bad, based on anything, right? Experience it for yourself. And don't be afraid to get to know that person and ask the questions that might seemingly be, who knows, maybe putting your foot in your mouth, but at the same time, maybe you get to know that person a little bit better. Maybe you get to find out about something that you had no idea about. Maybe you get to have an insight into that person's life or that person's struggle or that person's success that has a significant impact on you and that you're able to share, you know, in your life, and that we can then hopefully have a combined set of, you know, gifts that we can share with one another. Because I think at the end of the day, each of us are such unique artists that all have hopefully something that we feel that we can share and that we can say and that we have a story to tell. And that's why we do this. And I think that I think if people were to be a little less worried about, like I said, you know, what color you are, how tall you are, you know, if you have two hands or not, I think that people would much more easily see the person on the inside. And I think that again, like, that's what we want the audience to be in touch with, right? We're trying to share ourselves with an audience through a medium of, you know, opera. So yeah, I think, I don't know. I made that up. I hope that sounded good.
It was fantastic. Would you stop second guessing the things that you say? It was fantastic, Weston. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story and sharing
my pleasure.
Your experiences. I love this interview very much. And
I love talking to you.
I wanted to talk even more about more things, but you were talking so much. I'm just kidding.
Shut me up. I'm so sorry. We'll do part 2.
I let people express themselves. No, but thank you to the audience. We had some people that I had never seen on here. That's wonderful. Kevin Short, thank you for coming as always and being so supportive. And Darren Flagg, gosh, I haven't seen you in ages. Hi, Jim Lieberthal. The more we learn and share, the more we see. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, David, thank you. As always, Treese, thank you. So tune in next week. We'll be an hour earlier because she has a gig, and so I have to rehearse during the day. So we'll be a little bit earlier. And next week will be Arts Administrators of Color, a panel. That's and I am very much looking forward to that. So I think it's going to be at 7:00 Eastern, but I'll let you all know. But again, anyway, thank you, Weston, for coming on. I look forward to coming on your show. And I did not stand you up, but you know, a girl is busy out here in these streets. A girl's got 5 jobs, and you know.
No, listen. I know you were originally booked for my show for tomorrow, and I'm actually thrilled. I know that you will eventually be on my show, and it'll be great to talk about that. I'm actually getting to interview my first young artist tomorrow. I've had a great opportunity to talk with really established singers, but tomorrow I'm going to be able to interview a young artist who's coming up. Who last summer she sang Jake Heggie's world premiere "If I Were You." She was the title role in that. So she recently made a transition from mezzo to soprano, and so I think it'll be fun to talk about.
Amazing. And your show is tomorrow at 4
Central, 5 Eastern. Yeah.
Okay. Please tune in. Please support Weston and share. Okay.
Thank
y'all
you.
Have a good night. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week. Same time. Well, same bad channel, different time. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Love y'all. Bye.
Bye.